Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be going over some GeoGuessr tips for all the kind of obscure islands and overseas territories that are pretty uncommon, but this will help you get very high scores. I actually recently covered all of this in a short, so I'll link that down below if you're interested in seeing that, but I'm going to be covering more in-depth on all of these islands, so let's just get right into it. It shouldn't be too long of a video, but it's going to be pretty informative. Now, the biggest part about guessing islands is going to be the metas. So this is mostly Google cars, and this is because obviously they're islands, so Google had to get some kind of unique cars to cover all of it. And it's kind of the same thing with Greenland because everything's so disconnected. Each one has very different coverage, and a lot of the metas stand out quite a lot. So, starting with the northernmost island, this is Bermuda. Bermuda is right off the east coast of the USA. If you don't know where that is, it's a British overseas territory. But in GeoGuessr country streaks and country battle royale, it's considered its own country, and it's simple to identify. It's kind of this large black Google car. It's pretty boxy, and also the climate itself. It's kind of hilly, I guess, but there's going to be tons of palms. Moving south to the Caribbean Sea, we have an American overseas territory. This is the US Virgin Islands, and it's just south of the British Virgin Islands. And again, we have a pretty unique meta, like this red Google truck with roof racks as well. Sometimes you'll find a white version of this truck, but it'll have the same roof racks and back as well. Now, moving south to
Curaçao.
Curaçao. And this is actually an island that really confused me for a long time because I didn't really get the meta. It looked very similar to a lot of countries, but looking at it now, it's pretty unique with this black front visible car and then 4 roof racks that are also visible. Moving into the Pacific Ocean, I'm not going to be covering Hawaii in this video because it's just a US state, but a bit north of Hawaii is Midway Atoll, and this is mostly a US military base, I believe, and well, this is pretty well known. It has these birds like literally everywhere across the entire island. This island is actually quite common in duels. I've gotten it a ton just with these birds alone, and it also has Gen 2 coverage, pretty flat, with kind of these older, more run-down buildings. You don't really need meta to identify this. Also in the Pacific Ocean, we have yet another US overseas territory, and this is American Samoa. And again, the Google car is visible. It's more of a truck, really. But even without it, I think you could probably easily identify it. We have green plates, a hilly tropical landscape, and English. Once again, in the Pacific Ocean, we have another US overseas territory. Actually, a couple, but they're all very close together and have very similar metas. And this is the Northern Mariana Islands, as well as Guam. There isn't really anything special about these locations, but if you look closely, there's this long antenna on a fully blurred vehicle, and on a lot of these islands you can find this long antenna, but usually the car will be visible. But this is just not the case in all 3 of these islands. Next up, we have the second non-US or British overseas territory, and this is actually an Australian overseas territory in the Indian Ocean, and this is Christmas Island. Best way to identify Christmas Island, like all these islands, is the car, and it just has this visible box with these corners that are visible. But you'll also find Australian bollards, as well as these wooden poles with this metal piece on them. So there's a lot of clues you can use on Christmas Island to identify it. Now, west of Christmas Island, we have Cocos Island, which has one of the more unique metas out of all these. And we have this visible snorkel coming out of the corner of the car, and this is definitely different than the Kenyan snorkel, obviously, and the landscape is definitely different than Kenya, but there's a lot of stuff visible on the Google car. You have these on both sides, as well as a similar box to what Christmas Island has. Now this is more common on the western island. The eastern island will have a more similar meta to Christmas Island, but you'll have more of this white sand and like less trees overall. Finally, the only island that is in the African continent in this video is the French overseas territory of Réunion, and I've actually covered this in my last video on African tips, but if you didn't see that, I'll link it right here. And basically you identify this island by, like all of these islands, the meta. We have this white Google car with visible sides and mirrors, and then we also have roof racks, and interestingly enough we have tape on one of the roof racks, but unlike Ghana, which has it on this one, we have it on the back instead. And this used to confuse me quite a lot. Once you figure it out, it's pretty easy. Anyways, that's gonna be all for this video. I was almost considering putting the Faroe Islands in this video, but I've covered it so many times on the channel. Of course, if I missed anything in this video or got anything wrong, please tell me down below in the comments. Like and subscribe for more GeoGuessr content, and see you in the next one.